The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 6th session of the Association of State Drinking Water Administrators Lead Service Line Inventory Symposium. The symposium is an 8-part webinar series with a morning and afternoon session occurring each Wednesday in February with the intent to maximize the transfer of information among states, utilities, and the entire water sector regarding lead service line inventories. My name is Stephanie Schley, ASWA's Senior Water Policy Advisor, and I'll be monitoring this afternoon's session titled Show Me the Money, Funding for Lead Service Line Inventories and Replacement. As a reminder, all sessions will be recorded and will be available later on ASWA's website should you have connection issues or if you miss a session. The slides for this session's presentations are available for download under the Handouts tab to the right of your screen, and if you're unable to access them there, you can also find them on ASWA's website on the Events page. Next slide. Oh, you're asking there. Okay. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items we want to cover. One, please note that ASWA is unable to offer CEUs or completion certificates for this symposium. Additionally, we will not be able to provide any technical support during this session. If you have any issues with the lagging video or sound, please check your connection. And otherwise, we recommend closing all other applications in order to maximize your bandwidth while you're viewing this webinar. All sessions will be recorded and available on ASWA's website, as I said before. And the slides for this session are available for download in the Handouts tab. I already said that. And then each session will include a panel discussion where our speakers will answer your questions. So please type them in the chat box throughout the webinar, and that's also to your right. Next slide. So we'll be getting a lot of great information from our speakers during this session, but we're also very excited to share ASWA's new state implementation framework and sample inventory template that was released last week. Both are now available on our website and can be found at the link on your screen. The framework was developed as a starting point and will likely be releasing iterations as we get more guidance from US EPA. Next slide. So we've paired the release of this implementation framework with our symposium. And as you can see here, we've had an excellent set of topics lined up that we've already covered with a few still to come. And we're very excited to continue learning from our expert speakers. We have sessions planned, like I said, each Wednesday in February, and then we'll actually have a states-only debrief on March 2nd to talk about what we've learned. We hope you continue to join us for the remainder of the symposium, but if you can't make it, you can always visit the page for the recorded sessions and materials. Next slide. So this is kind of drilling it in for all of you who've been able to join us for all the sessions, but we want to remind all those tuning in what our symposium is and what it's not. The symposium will not cover EPA's inventory guidance and is not the final word on specific inventory requirements. Additionally, we won't be able to answer state-specific questions or speak to what will or will not ultimately be required. The focus of the symposium is to be a starting point for the drinking water community to begin developing inventories and an opportunity to further the discussion on inventories. You'll hear shared experiences from states and water system experts, and we want to use this opportunity to begin some of those critical discussions. Next slide. So with the recent passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law, which earmarked $15 billion over the next 5 years for addressing lead lines, and the White House's goal to replace all lead service lines, funding is a large part of the lead service line inventory discussion. Today, you'll hear from 5 state regulators who are here to discuss best practices and the challenges related to funding. We have Lori Matthew from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, Cindy Christian from the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, William Carr of the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Steve Marshall from the New York Department of Health, and Eddie Randor from Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality. So after we hear from each of our speakers, we'll have 45 minutes to an hour for questions. So this session is pretty different from all the other ones that we've had and is meant to be a true discussion. So therefore, we have no formal presentations. We'll just be hearing from each of our speakers for a few minutes before we get to a larger discussion. So for this one, we really encourage you to pose as many questions as you can think of within the chat box to the right of your screen, with the understanding that we probably won't get to all of them. We have over 800 people currently on the line, which is great, but we'll try and get to as many as we can today. So with that, I will hand it first over to Lori Matthew, who's the current ASWA president, to kick us off.
Stephanie, thank you very much. And Alan and Anthony and the ASWA staff, thank you for putting on these very important webinars for all of us across the country. I, as representative of the Connecticut Department of Public Health under my Commissioner Manisha Jutani, we want to welcome you to this particular portion. This is so important at this moment in time to be speaking on lead. Years ago, when we all learned about the events in Flint, Michigan, we also, a lot of us that were around at that time as drinking water administrators, looked at what we were doing within our own states. Many of us started to work on programs and to change things and to make sure that we were going above and beyond what the current federal law, lead and copper rule, requires, because we knew the rule needed to be fixed. We knew we needed to do more. We needed to know that and to provide more focus on lead. I'm a public health official. All of us here are public health officials, whether you work for an environmental agency or a public health agency like I do in Connecticut. We work to protect people's health by provision of safe drinking water. And I constantly tell people that and remind them what our jobs are. So it couldn't be more critical in this point in time. The amount of money that's coming our way is significant. Just it's unlike any other time in our careers as officials that work on drinking water, to provide this money and invest it correctly, working with EPA and the guidance that are due out soon. We have a lot of work ahead in the next 6 months to be able to program this into our intended use plans, to be able to work with all the stakeholders who are asking all of us questions. How is this money going to come in? How are you going to invest it? What are you doing with it? Why aren't you doing it now? Why can't I drive by and get the big foam check in front of your building? We're getting a lot of pressure, all of us as state regulators, but we are up to the task, I say. So in our state, I'll talk a little bit about little old Connecticut. Well, you might think, oh my goodness, Lori, what do you have, 2 systems? You don't have a lot of work to do. Well, in our state, we're very small. We're very small, part of New England, right? We have 2,400 public water systems, 2,400. 2,000 of those are non-community systems, but there are 400 community systems. There are about 80 systems that serve over 1,000 people, but we don't have very large cities, right? We have Hartford, we have New Haven, we have Bridgeport, Waterbury that are just about over 100,000 people. That's it, right? We don't have the big city. We're in between the 2 big cities. I see Steve there in New York. We got New York City and you got Boston, and we're small, very small in comparison to those cities. But we have a lot of aging infrastructure. We have old, as you heard, Joe Lazafami from New London, which is a city on Long Island, on the Long Island Sound in southeastern Connecticut. You heard from Tom Barger from the Regional Water Authority serving the greater New Haven area. Tom represents one of our larger public water systems, as he noted. A lot of older housing stock, a lot of homes and developments from the 1800s, and those houses, probably knocked down and rebuilt, but the lead pipes still may remain. We have a lot of lead that we have to deal with, not only in lead service line identification and removal, but also in our housing stock. We have quite a bit of old houses that still are harming children to this day. So in our Department of Public Health, it's all things lead. We are looking at a holistic approach. We're actually reviewing, we're so pleased that EPA came out with your all things lead guidance and looking at it on a holistic basis. Drinking water is a big part of it, and that's what I want to get to. So we have those systems in our state. We have 75 to 80 of them that serve over 1,000 people. Many of those are in disadvantaged communities. We're going to talk a little bit, or talk a lot, about Justice 40 and how all of that works. But in our state, we have quite a bit of disadvantaged communities in those cities like Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, New London, Waterbury. Every one of those, Meriden, Norwich, every one of those cities I just mentioned are considered disadvantaged. Many of those built up in the 1700s into the 1800s and the 1900s. Older housing stock, a lot of lead in paint, older houses, but also a lot of lead service lines, which we don't know much about yet. Today, we have an inventory of about 18,000 lead service lines so far. That's what we have. Many of those are presumed lead. Many of that has come to us. We've worked very closely with ASWA, and I want to thank Diane and Beth, who put together the ASWA information. But I also I see William here from Kansas. We stole William's, spreadsheet, took it to our state, and we are learning from each other. And we have our own spreadsheet, which we've worked really hard on, but we've definitely learned from all of you what this inventory spreadsheet should look like, start to pull together a data system. So we have 18,000 right now, but we anticipate it could be well over 100,000 lead service lines, up to maybe 300,000 lead service lines in our state, in our little old state. Right now, one thing that we did last year is that we did an extra call for projects under our SRF process. We asked specifically for lead service line projects. We now have 12 projects requesting for lead service line planning and removal, requesting over $134 million. For the bill, we're receiving over 5 years, about $150 million. So we already have a very large request by 12 systems, 12 public water systems that are our larger public water systems in our state. 10 of those projects are in disadvantaged communities. Some of the ones that I've mentioned. New London, Joe Lazafami, thank you for presenting and representing Connecticut so well. Joe represents the very first lead service line project that's actually going to start actively removing lead service lines, very first in our state. We're very proud of that. We're very proud that he's come into the SRF program and is requesting the money. But he's also said, you know what, I can't afford all of it. So we need to work harder. Thank you, Stephanie. We need to work harder on looking at the money. And the title is Show Me the Money here. So if you think about what I just mentioned, we have 134 million in requests for 12 projects. We are getting 150 million for lead service line removals over 5 years. Do we have enough money coming from the infrastructure fund? No, we don't. To remove all of them, we know that we don't. So it's some of the initial items that we're looking at is what do we do about that? How do we utilize our base program and the new supplemental program to help with that? How can we restructure our intended use plan to be able to help the disadvantaged communities to the best that we can and invest that money to help people who need it the most? We don't have all the answers. We're not going to pretend to have all the answers, but with my team and my SRF group, who I worry about a lot, because number one, before we all started this, we were talking behind the scenes and we were saying there's a lot of stress on all of us to get this up and running and spend this money quickly. We're going to get a lot of requests and there's going to be a lot of need, a technical assistance need. So I'm really going to look to EPA for a few things. One, you need to get us your guidance documents. I know you're working on them and we thank you for that. Two, we need a lot of technical assistance beyond just the guidance. We're going to need you. We're going to need webinars. All of our staffs are going to have a lot of questions coming their way. So, and we have a lot of questions for people that are non-traditional to our program. So it really is very important to work together. And I know our colleagues, Jennifer McLean, Radhika Fox, we've been working very closely with. We need you. We need your help. And we're just getting started on our road and our journey. And Stephanie, with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Lori. That was a great platform to launch everybody else. So now we're actually going to go to Cindy in Alaska, who is extremely different, going from Lori in Connecticut, who has tens of thousands of lines, out to Cindy, who's a very different scenario. So Cindy, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, and thanks for inviting me to speak on this panel. And as Stephanie said, we're almost in the opposite situation that Lori is in. We are a very young state. We were only a state since 1959. And most of our infrastructure was built after the use of lead lines were common. So as far as we know, based on our inventories that were done back in the 1990s when the lead and copper rule was first promulgated, we do not have any lead service lines in the state. So like Lori, we have about 1,400, a little over 1,400 public water systems in the state. About 435 of those are community water systems. So we will be working with them, and We are a 1% state, so we're being allocated about $28 million per year over the next 5 years under the lead service line replacement set-asides. So our problem is different, not that we don't have enough money, we have maybe too much money, and we're looking for ways to obtain that funding and to support our staffs. So some of the things that we've been looking at are, first of all, guidance from EPA on what projects are eligible for use, not just lead service line replacements, because I know that there are other states. We heard yesterday, I think, from Arizona. They're in kind of a similar situation that we are, where we don't have many, or if any, lead service lines. So what are some other ways that we can utilize that funding? So a couple of things that we've been looking at, possibly pursuing, are using the money to help supplement inventories. As we've heard over the last couple of weeks, inventories are probably the most important thing that is coming out of the lead and copper rule revisions. We do need to revise our inventories, redo our inventories, and we're looking at ways to use that money to accomplish that. We do have in the state, we're a little bit different in that we do have the majority of the tribal systems in the country. We have about a little over 500, I think 574 tribal systems in the United States, and 229 of those are in Alaska. That's about 40% of the tribal systems in the entire country are in Alaska. And we are the only state that has direct implementation with those tribal systems. So we have regulatory oversight, and about 100% of those systems are disadvantaged. So that gets into the Environmental Justice 40 topics that we've been talking about. So we're looking for ways to help those systems do adequate inventories, and hoping that we can use some of this money to do that. And as Lori said, ever since Flint, you know, all of the states have been keeping much closer track of the systems that have action level exceedances. And we currently have 6 community systems that have lead action exceedances that we're tracking. One of the things that we've done over the, when we first we first started really closely tracking the lead action level exceedances, we had something like 28 systems that were exceeding. And so over the past few years, and especially focusing on our tribal systems, we've been doing faucet replacement projects because, again, we don't have lead service lines, but we did have some of these systems that had lead action level exceedances. So we looked at you know, kind of like, well, where is that coming from? Why are they having exceedances, and what can we do to mitigate the exposure to lead for those communities? And one of the things that we came up with was obviously fixtures in the homes. So we have embarked on faucet replacement projects. So that includes the faucet and the appurtenances that are in under the sink, to replace those in 8 communities that we've done so far. And in every single community, of course, we require 100% replacement of the faucets and the appurtenances. We put the system back on 6 months monitoring, and in every single one of those projects, we have been successful in drastically lowering the exposure to lead. They are all below the action level by substantial amounts. So that's been very successful, and we would like to keep replicating that success if we are able to use this money for those purposes. The other thing that we have talked about is galvanized. We're not sure exactly how much galvanized line we have, but that is one thing that we hope to find out during the inventory process, and if that is something that we need to be focused on. And then the other project that we do have a lot of use of copper lines with lead solder up here. So that is something else that we've been focusing on but it doesn't look like we'll be able to use the money for those types of projects, but we have looked at that. So anyway, those are the main things that we've been looking at, that we've been considering on being able to use this money in the most effective way that's pertinent to our state. And as Lori said, we are also looking at staffing up. We are looking at increasing our drinking water program staff by over 20%, a little bit over 20% in the next year. And hiring all of those folks and getting them trained up is going to be a challenge, but hopefully we're up for that challenge. And I think, Stephanie, that's about all I have. So I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So next we'll go to William with Kansas.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's afternoon for about all the nation by now. So let's talk a little bit about Kansas. So in Kansas, we're kind of, I guess, in between Lori and Cindy. The SRF program, actually for the last 7 years, we've offered 30% loan forgiveness for lead service line projects, replacement projects. And to date, we have had no takers, 0 takers. No one has put a project, a pre-application in. There's been nothing on our intended use plan. So, you know, whether that's, the loan forgiveness wasn't high enough, or that, probably the biggest reason is nobody really wants to know. No one's motivated to find out how much lead service lines they have. Maybe there's some that just didn't want to admit it. So we're thinking, though, between the lead copper rule revisions and this bill money, that we are going to get some interest coming through. The one thing Lori had mentioned, that we have an inventory spreadsheet that we recently developed. Several years ago, we did a push to get systems to turn in inventories. We learned a lot. We learned a lot of what to do. We learned a lot of what not to do. So this spreadsheet is kind of our lessons learned, turn of events. One of the things that we are planning on is we won't execute a loan for lead service line replacements until that inventory has been completed. And it has to be on our format, our spreadsheet. We need all the information that our spreadsheet captures. So that's likely going to be a problem, especially for smaller systems. So what we're planning on doing is using the 4% and 2% set-asides. Now, whether or not we can use the actual bill lead grant for that, if EPA will let us apply for that without having projects for actual replacement, if they won't, then we'll use any eligible project pot of funds. But we'll use that 4% and 2% set aside. And we're planning on, we're going to go set an RFP out to request contractors, submit proposals we'll take those vendors and then help systems complete their inventories. And whether that's doing a more of a paper research type activity to try to find, okay, here are the areas you really need to look at, all the way to someone actually coming in and on site and looking at things, looking at where the meter's connected and where it's connected to the residents, or even digging up stuff up. It's a whole spectrum of what it would take to complete those lead service line inventories. But this is going to be a contract with the state. We figured that this way we have control over the quality of the end product, and that we get to say what's acceptable, what's not, for the contractor's work. We won't charge the systems anything. The systems won't be responsible for the contractors, won't be responsible, for the contractor's work products. So it's all on the state. We figured it'd be a lot easier, especially for small systems. We do plan on, targeting this to small systems. How small systems we haven't quite figured out yet, whether we'll go, full 10,000 or less, or some smaller subset. But that is our plan, and hopefully we can get enough assistance out there that people will start to understand if they have a lead service line problem and admit to it and submit us projects for that. I will say we have some of our larger utilities that have contacted us. They know they had lead service lines, but I guess up to this point they've never been motivated, to do a project just for lead service lines. I think that's changing. Also, the larger systems are interested if they can replace galvanized lines with the lead service line replacement money. I think that's a really big problem, and I think we'll run out of money quick even if we just limit it to galvanized lines. So that's kind of where Kansas is at. We're hoping to find out more. We're sending out solicitations specifically for lead service line projects to see if we can get enough information to populate some project priority lists. But otherwise, we're really focused on trying to get those inventories done because we won't execute alone without them. So,
thanks so much, William. So now we'll go to Steve at New York.
Thank you, Stephanie. Can you all see and hear me? Okay. So I think I'm kind of the odd man out here on the panel with regards to the number of the systems we have, the size of our state, things like that. We are one of the largest in the nation. We have about 9,400 systems across the state. About 35 to 100 of those are community water systems. And since 2017, we've been running a lead service line replacement program here in the state. The state passed their own infrastructure act that made our lead service line replacement program. It is a pilot program. We got two funding appropriations from that. One was for 20 million, and one was for 10 million. So we basically had to come up with a new program from scratch. So we did that, and we went out and we contacted some of the water systems around our state that we thought might be good candidates, thought they might have some lead lines, and thought they might want to get some some grant money from the state to try to take those out. So we've been working with those systems about 50 or so since then. So my perspective on this is not so much what we're going to do and how we're going to get this new money out from the infrastructure bill, but kind of some of the lessons learned with the money that we did have and the money that we did give out. And I think it was a very worthwhile experience, because you see there are some systems that are right on top of this. They know where their lead lines are. They're all set to go. There are some systems that don't know what you are really talking about, and then most of them sort of fall somewhere in between. And a lot of the pitfalls that we've come across are basically with having to work with like the water systems to get them on board, and some of like the issues that you run into at like the local level, like the public versus private part of like the service line, having to deal with different local governments. Like you said, like you might get a changeover in like local government, and a new town supervisor, or a new village mayor, and all of a sudden they need to be brought back up to speed on what really they're trying to do with their service lines. So there's a lot of those kind of issues. One issue that we've also run into a lot is trying to find contractors to actually do the work. It's not like this is a standard type of an SRF project where you're going to construct a new storage tank. You're going to install 10 miles of main, and you're talking about a lot of money. Sometimes these contracts down at like the local level are not very large, and a lot of contractors don't want to take that amount of work on for the amount of money that is involved, as well as some of the SRF or other the program requirements that they have, MWBE, Buy American, Justice 40, all these other different things that get wrapped into it, taking on some funds. So there are a lot of those local issues that you need to try to deal with that can't really just be solved with you get a big pot of money and you have to go do the work. So so I think I bring that avenue to this discussion, and I know almost up to like my 5 minutes. So yeah, so I think just to say, so since late 2017, we've done about 2,100 lead lines across the state, and that's almost 5 years from now. So I know like they're going to want this money to be spent relatively quickly and lead lines to be done relatively quickly. And from my own personal experience, it doesn't really go that fast. So I think a lot of people are going to need like to temper some of their temper their expectations. And when it comes to making like an inventory, from what we've heard in all these other talks that we've had so far this month, I think it's going to take a lot more work than people might really think, and a lot more time than I think a lot of people really might think. So yeah, so I just kind of wanted to point those things out. Thanks, Stephanie.
Awesome, thanks, Steve. Okay, so now before we go into Q&A, we'll hear last from Eddie.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you as well for the opportunity to speak. So listening to panelists, listening to Lori with Connecticut, and Steve in New York, and William in Arkansas, and Cindy in Alaska. And I kind of, in that order, I guess we're somewhere between Kansas and Alaska in terms of progress made on the lead service line inventory and replacement. What I'm going to speak to you about today is about Oklahoma's plan for the lead service line funds as a portion of the bill. In anticipation of both the LCRR and the bill, what we did internally is formed a public water supply section or group, work group. And basically it was to kind of see what's coming down the pike from the LCRR and how it's going to affect us, the workload, and how it's going to affect the communities that we regulate. And I happen to be representing the funding portion of the LCRR here within our agency. So our plan, collectively, Lori talked about having 12 projects, I believe, in the project priority list, and having a need of a multi-million-dollar need, which exceeds their allotments over the next 5 years. Well, for us, from the bill, our portion will be about $40 million. For obviously, as those that are in the SRF do know that 49% of that would have to be in the form of a loan forgiveness grant, free money. That money is not automatic. It's a process. You got to have a project priority list. You have to develop the intended use plan, go through the public engagement period, do a grant application, and at such time, you will have that fund available to you. For us here in Oklahoma to give that money to the state, what we are doing is, to start with the project priority list, which we didn't have. So we started with a survey, and I believe that my colleague Mark Stassison did speak in details about the survey that we sent out late last year. It was simple. It had 10 questions, and it did not involve any questions of the sort that where someone would have to pick a shovel and go dig and see what's out there. It was more of the information that they have either somewhere in the shelf or in their head. We get by all accounts, I believe it's a good response rate. I believe we had 108 water systems out of the 800 and some that were reached. We have about 1,300 water systems, but we were able to reach out to only about 800 or 900 because of, a lot of these communities are rural and don't have, even an email. So we sent out that. So we identified about 108 water systems that we will be reaching out to. We also looked at our inventory that we collected over the years, just as a part of the LCR, and we do look at the list of those that have action level incidents over the last few years as well. We will reach out to the largest systems here in the state. We also dig through our recent need survey, the 2021 need survey that we just completed within the last few months. So all in all, we managed to get about, I believe, 296 water systems that have, that indicated that they have some lead lines. They do not know where. They do not know how many. They do not know what they have in the private side, let alone in the public side, let alone what in the private side. So we collectively going to reach out to these communities, about 300 of them, directly, talk to each one of them and ask them to provide us with, if they desire to do so, to send a letter and be placed and put on our project priority list for two things: that we could use the money. I know that Williams, because they started some years ago, so they kind of ahead of us. So we are going to put that money for both for planning purposes, identifications, and lead replacements. Obviously, those that do have the lead service line identified, they will be ready to proceed, hopefully, and they would be prioritized, and those would go first. So that's once we have that project priority list, it would help us develop our intended use plan. Parallel to this is from the loan fund portion of the capitalization grant. We're also contemplating on putting together a contract from the set asides. That it will be a state contract, kind of like what Kansas is doing, where the contractor would answer to us as a state. We will dictate that process to them. We could also identify those systems that would have to be helped first to meet the Justice 40 initiative, to meet the disadvantaged community and that sort of things. We foresee some of the challenges, at least that, at this point, and in talking to a community that I visited with about 10 days or so ago, the problem is, and that draft guidance, well, not a draft guidance, it was some sort of a document that was circulating from EPA back in late December, that we cannot do a partial replacement. So we have to do both. If you touch that lead service line, and you need to do a replacement, so you cannot just replace a portion, and by a portion just what publicly owned. So you have to kind of replace the entire thing. Well, in talking to this community, and there are many other communities here, at least for us in the state, where you can't do the work and you can't put the taxpayers' dollar on the privately owned portion of the line. So that will be challenging for us. So, and we will be reaching out to those that have done this type of work before us, just to kind of learn from them, learn from their experience and how they get around in doing so. But in a nutshell, this is what we plan on doing at least the first year. So we are not going to have a perfect intended use plan, but it is an intended use plan after all, and it is subject to modifications and amendments and such. So we would adapt and change and modify as we go. But this is, our idea and the draft plan here in the Oklahoma, and hoping to learn from the panelists and those questions that will be asked by the attendees. So I hope I can be able to show you the money. It's a process. We can't show you the money today.
Eddie, thank you so much. You guys were great. Y'all were like right on the mark. We're 3:45, so we have 45 minutes for discussion. So actually, I have a few kind of heavy hitter questions that we've all kind of hit on a little bit actually already. But since we're a fairly large panel, I don't expect, y'all don't have to chime in for every single one, but, if you want to answer, just put your hand up or whatnot, or just, chime in. The first one, though, that I did want to hit on, this group, when we were meeting to kind of talk about what we were going to discuss, Justice 40 just automatically comes to the top. So as we all know, the Justice 40 initiative that the White House put out, it's a 40% goal to have, or a goal of 40% to have the benefits from federal initiatives go to disadvantaged communities. Now, those benefits doesn't solely mean actual funds. However, it's obviously a big part of the conversation. So as EPA is still working out the logistics on what this looks like as far as what a benefit is and how this is going to work through the SRFs, what are your states considering as you're looking to implement the BIL money with disadvantaged communities in mind? I'm going to pick on Lori first because Lori is chairing our Justice 40 group for ASDWA, and this has been a huge part of the conversation. So, Lori, I know you have many thoughts.
Well, thank you. So, I was taking notes from everybody. So I love all the information from all of you. It's great how we learn from each other. But Justice 40 will be an important initiative. It is a goal, as we understand it. It's not a must-do, but there will be must-dos that come along once we see the guidance and about making sure that the people that need the help the most get the help. A lot of us said that we're going to contract out to help these small systems, these disadvantaged communities, try to find, like Eddie said, there's going to be a big struggle to try to do identification or just to even understand what you're talking about. We have all of us have a lot of small systems that are going to need some help in determining what to do and how to do it. Some of the most basic things. So for us in our state, my commissioner, we're about health equity. Health equity is defined by helping the people that need the help the most in disadvantaged communities and disadvantaged situations. One of the metrics that we're using and we've looked at ever since, we haven't whispered the word COVID, but I will add it here. COVID has taught us a lot within our Department of Health. As we've been through it all, we've all made it through, we've survived, we've lost a lot of people to it, unfortunately. We've seen a lot. But COVID has shown that there are people in disadvantaged communities that are always at the place where they need, they're maybe the last in line and last thought about. We are looking at a metric that CDC utilizes, and we've utilized through COVID, known as SVI, Social Vulnerability Index. And it dives in deep beyond a state, beyond a town level for disadvantaged communities. It looks at census block information, and it looks at income. It looks at access to food, to transportation, to many things, well beyond some of the other metrics that we've been using. And it's something that we've used in COVID times to help focus in on identification of the neighborhoods that need the help the most within a community, such as New London, for instance. You heard from Joe Lazafami. New London is a city of about 28,000 people, as he mentioned. There are some areas that are very disadvantaged, and SVI shows you that metric. Within a city that is all disadvantaged within the state of Connecticut, but if you look at SVI, it shows you by the census block where we need to focus some funding to help people that are in disadvantaged situations. So we're just starting down that road, and Justice 40 is going to help us with providing focus, utilizing the SVI metric, EJ, which our colleagues in our environmental agency have and have utilized for years, as well as our own definition in state law of disadvantaged communities. So a lot to think about there, a lot to put together. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks so much, Lori. Is there any other quick thoughts? We have a ton of questions coming through, and I want to try and get to as many as we can, but this is a huge topic, so I want to give it some time. Go ahead, William.
I'll just say the disadvantaged communities and how SRF, tracks. That's going to be a big record keeping. We're going to have to look at different ways of how our utilities serve different groups of communities. So as far as, it's going to take some work to try to figure out the reporting. However, I strongly believe, and of course, no guidance has been put out yet, but a disadvantaged community shouldn't be the same thing as our qualification for affordability or qualification for loan forgiveness funds. We need to do a better job of showing how the SRF program as a whole is assisting disadvantaged communities. But to say that disadvantaged communities can only get the free money is tough, because we don't loan to disadvantaged communities, we loan to utilities. And there are disadvantaged communities in those utilities. But to say that our qualification for loan forgiveness is based on disadvantaged communities, that's going to be hard to do.
Great, thank you guys. So they had a couple questions come in the chat about this, and this was actually something that we've been hearing a lot about. So we have the LCR rolling out that has these inventory requirements, and we have the BIL pumping in a ton of money. What are you all feeling like with your staff levels and the workload that this is gonna put? Cindy, I see you smiling. Someone actually was talking about Alaska. You want to give a little bit more information about kind of what y'all are looking at with that?
Yeah, I think we're in the same situation that most of the other states. We've been having a ton of meetings and a ton of webinars and attending to try to get as much information as we possibly can about this. We currently have 47 staff members in the drinking water program. About 23 of those are compliance and enforcement, and then we have about 15 engineers. We are going to see one thing that I didn't mention before, and it goes back to the Justice 40. Not only is Alaska getting money from the BIL for the SRF set-asides, but we also have a ton of money coming into the state under the Indian Health Service that is going to be allocated for serving the Alaska Native villages. So we have a little bit of a calculus that we're trying to do, and right now, obviously, we do not have enough staff to accomplish everything that we need to accomplish. I know that I probably speak for everyone over the past couple years, dealing with COVID, dealing with everybody working from home, dealing with all of the different things and all of the emerging contaminants, new rules, so forth. We're all just barely keeping our heads above water. So to add all of these other requirements and all of this infrastructure money is going to be a challenge for all of us, I think. And so what we're currently looking at is adding 10 more staff to our program so that we can focus on the inventories, the lead and copper rule revisions, and implementing all of the requirements under the BIL. So again, I think that's about 20%, a little over 20% increase in the staff that we're looking at. And we're also looking at an increase. The state is a little bit different. I don't oversee the SRF money. That's overseen by a different division in my same department. And they are also looking to staff up, because keeping track of all of these pots of money and all of the different projects and the intended use plans. So they are also looking at staffing up in preparation for trying to accomplish all of this work.
Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so we have roughly the same number of staff in our drinking water program that you do, Cindy. And our state's a lot larger, so it's going to be very interesting to see how this is going to impact the current staff we have. That's just mostly in like the central office. But I mean, we're looking to get about 115 million per year for the 5 year each year for the 5 years. So that's gonna correlate to a lot of money overall, a lot of projects overall, and to basically add that workload onto the staff we have currently doing the state revolving fund and the service line replacement program is going to add a lot of workload to that staff. I know my management has been taking a long look at this and sort of, trying to come up with a plan to get more staff on board, and just try to see how that would work and where they would sit. I mean, that's also that's also part of it, is we don't have enough seats. But yeah, it's definitely going to be an impact on how we're able to do this program, not just lead service lines, but also the normal state revolving fund with the other, infrastructure bill money. It's just going to be a lot of additional work, and we're kind of scared. We're a little nervous. So I think all of us are. I think we're all in the same boat, that it's going to be a lot more work. So we got to try to figure out where that additional staff is going to come from. Thank you.
So Stephanie,
Yeah.
to follow up on Steve's point, the work is here right now, and it's on the staff that we have. So we have about, similar to Cindy's number and to Steve's number, you guys have so many more systems than we do in our little state, but we have 2,400 systems. We have about 48 staff, engineers, environmental analysts that do that work in the drinking water section. That's inclusive of the SRF program. We have a massive hiring plan. We have a lot of people we want to hire. We have a lot of engineers. It takes engineers, environmental analysts, fiscal people, right? Fiscal contracts. Every one of these loans is considered a contract. So we also work with our treasurer's office because we're a leveraged program. So we're looking to hire people out within those other programs so that we can move loans quickly. It's not just engineering. It's a lot of other people, because we're looking at not only lead service lines, it's all of it. It's the tripling of the SRF fund to begin with. It's a lot of work, a lot of tracking, a lot of accounting, a lot of contracts. These utilities want the money. They want it right away. They're not going to wait 5 months to get a contract through us, which is the loan, essentially. So for us, we have a massive hiring plan. We want to get the problem we have is the work is right now. We won't get, as Eddie pointed out, the whole process is going to take us through this calendar year, right? We won't really see the money here or have it until October, November timeframe, all right? If we do everything right. And so when do you start to hire people using that money? I'm trying to get that done soon, but the money's not here yet. So it's interesting how, the work is in front of us today, and I'm really very concerned about, putting all of this on the existing staff that we have. So we're looking to get extra time for staff to do this work and to put this whole program together. So it is a lot to do. We're definitely up for it. But I would say one thing from my point of view, it's incredibly important to get all of your management and the upper management and the governor's office involved in understanding what it is and the stress that you all have, because they need to know. And I think that I know from my experience, they're being incredibly supportive, because it's not just drinking water money. There's all this other billions coming in on all of the infrastructure money. So there's probably, people getting set up to do reporting through the governor's office. And so telling your story about how important it is. We're only getting 400 445 million over 5 years, right? 445 for the little old state of Connecticut. It's a lot of money for us to be able to manage, but we need the staff to be able to do it correctly.
Thanks, Lori.
And
Oh yeah, go ahead, Eddie.
what I was going to say, kind of on a staffing, we have the same issue as just every state. What will be challenging for us is, hiring a permanent employees. We do realize that what just the, not just the bill funding, but what the LCRR is bringing to state, just that alone. We were looking at what Michigan, had to hire to do the implementation of their own version of LCRR. And I think if we were to equate that based on the population, we need about another 6 full-time employees here doing just the LCRR, let alone the implementation of the bill. To mitigate that, we are looking at hiring a contract employees and using the SRF set asides to pay for that, for those, salaries or contract to get us through the bill. So, and we will deal with the what the LCRR is going to create and potentially the LCRI, when that arrives. So, but it'll continue to be an issue for sure.
This kind of piggybacks off of this a little bit. Specifically, I think, Lori, what you were saying, Eddie, I believe you were the one who kind of touched on this when we were talking. But, we're currently working under a continuing resolution with the federal government. So we haven't even seen the big omnibus bills coming out for spending. And I know when we had met, there was a lot of talk. I'm seeing some questions in the chat about the optics of this with the public, that the money's there. We've been talking about it. It's all ready to go out the door. But the reality is that, as Lori was saying, we're in the grand scheme of things, we're quite a ways off still from getting those funds, getting projects on board and then getting those money out the door. So how, what are the issues or thoughts that you have right now on that public perception? Yeah, go ahead, Eddie. You were kind of.
I'm sorry, Eddie.
Yep. Oh no, go ahead.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
it's hard. You're all a strip.
No, so the thing that I want to say, so since we've been working on a lead service line replacement program for about 5 years at this point, we have like a website and it's got its own sort of it's got its own mailbox. I used to get email or two a week. Oh, what's the lead service line replacement program? I have a lead line. I need to get money. Blah blah blah. Since this infrastructure bill got announced and it was been all over like the news, I get like a couple a day now of just people from like the general public asking, hey, I've got a lead service line, how can I get money? And I basically at this point have to tell them, well, we don't quite have that money yet, but we still have our own state money. So if you have, so if you live in one of those systems, you can try to work with that and try your money. But I think just that itself is sort of an indicator that the word is making its way down to the general public, and they know about it a little bit. They sort of know what's involved. They know they should maybe ask if they can get money. But I don't think it's really gotten, like, the point out there is we're not going to give money to an individual that owns their own house. They're going to have to work through their local, water system to get their lead line done. And on sort of on like the flip side of that, or sort of like the tangent of that, is I've also been contacted by a number of consulting firms that they know about this and they want to work with the state. So they want to try to get involved and try to get up front too, to see what like work is out there to sort of get involved in because there's going to be a lot of money out there. So I think the word is out there. Exactly what the message has to be tied to, like the timing of that money and what's involved with actually trying to get some of that money. As with all the states, we had to wait for the EPA guidance to sort of get that message out. But I know that the word is at least out there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Eddie, do you have some more thoughts?
Yeah, if I may add to that, what Steve mentioned. Yeah, and we've been, I've been myself getting those calls. We've been working against those forces that from Washington, D.C. that tells people that, hey, your state is getting $90 million. And we've got people that are just calling and say, hey, we've heard that you're getting $90 million. When do I get my check? I'm like, well, I wish it worked that way, but it's not. It's and that one thing that was missed in that messaging is it's not, and I said that at my point earlier, it's not automatic. It's not that Oklahoma is getting $90 million and that check is going to come from the Treasury to Oklahoma and we get to do whatever with that money. So there is that process. And I think that's what we've been, trying to hit that point home to the communities that we serve. It's not it's here is $90 million, Oklahoma, do what you need to do with that. So we still have to go through that process of having, first of all, having a need and showing that you have a need and go through the drafting of that intended use plan as I mentioned. But that's definitely been challenging because that's what the public, and that some of it is what the politician at a state level here, and you get those calls from the politicians and you kind of have to explain that as well, that it is true that we will get potentially $90 million, but that's not tomorrow, it's not next month. So
great. Now, this is actually very related. So I'm going to jump to this question because we're talking IUPs now. This person said they'd appreciate hearing how states are handling the development of the intended use plans given the timing. They're saying that they're taking priority list applications this month, even though they don't have final EPA guidance yet. This might be a good one to actually go just because I think it's a pretty quick answer. But William, do you want to start there?
Yeah, we're not really changing our process. Matter of fact, this month we're sending out notices, soliciting projects, pre-applications to get projects on our project priority lists. We still plan on, doing our regular intended use plan by July 1st. What I anticipated, and I don't know if it will happen or now, but my current intended use plan for 2022, which the 2022 money has already been appropriated for bill, not the regular appropriation, but my 2022 IUP has enough projects on it to cover the any eligible funds pot of money. And so in my mind, I should be able to apply for that as soon as EPA tells us we can apply for that. That will help me out if I can get access to those set-asides. That will help me out on the lead service line inventory part of things. But otherwise, my next intended use plan will cover 2 years worth of money. It'll cover whatever we don't have plans for on the 22 appropriation plus anticipated 23 appropriation.
Thanks, William. Steve?
So we put out, an intended use plan once a year. We have pretty much a continuous, call for, like the applications to get listed on the intended use plan. So that's not really going to change. We'll need to wait on the guidance, from the from EPA to see sort of what modifications we might need to make to like scoring systems or anything like that. But I don't perceive the timing of things really changing all that much from what they are. And we're the same, as William. I mean, we've got enough projects right now in the intended use plan, to cover all of the money that we're going to get. So maybe not for the lead service lines, but for the normal infrastructure bill money. We've got more than enough projects on there right now. So yeah.
Great, thanks. Cindy, I know this might be a little bit different since you're still kind of trying to figure out the lead service line aspect, but how about you all?
Yeah, we're still trying to work out the process for what we're going to be doing with our intended use plan this year. And as everybody says, we usually have more projects than we have money to do. So I don't think finding projects for the normal set-asides are, or the normal SRF is going to be a problem, but we're still waiting for guidance on the lead service lines and what we can use that for.
Great. Lori?
Well, we have, due to our call last year, we have over half $500 million in requests in our comprehensive list from last year. So we have the great benefit of essentially having enough money, right? Our little old state has enough money to cover all those projects. I think where we have a concern is staffing. It goes back to, do we have enough people to be able to process all of that, right? No, we don't. So we need the people. There's one thing we haven't talked about, maybe we should, engineers. Very difficult to find these days, incredibly difficult, right? All of us are having a hard time bringing engineers to the table. So we've done a call for projects. We just opened it up 2 weeks ago. Our intention is to promote the heck out of it and get the word out to everybody. We've even, for the very first time, informed legislators, town officials. We've usually going after the eligible applicants, but we're going after everybody. We want to inform everybody. We intend to hold a webinar to be able to explain what all of this is to people who are non-traditional to this process, because there's a lot of them out there. A lot of non-traditional people want in on this money and want to understand it. So our call has started, and we're going to hold it through the end of March formally, just to get a new refreshed project priority list. But we see that a lot of the work is going to be in the grant applications. The intended use plan is going to get more complicated real quick, right? But the grant applications, there probably will be at least 3. Instead of 1, there's going to be 3 at least. So there's a lot of work there. And again, on the same people that already have a lot of work. I see us really struggling to get everything done over the next few months that needs to get done. It's going to be a lot of work.
Great. Thanks, Lori. Eddie, you want to round us out for this question?
Sure. So we're doing a continuous call for the project. So our current project priority list for the base program is got enough project to kind of cover both the what's coming from the 22 federalization capitalization grant, which we don't know yet, and what's coming, the supplemental deliveries of that from the bill. So we're not worried about that. We will be reaching out to those systems that I indicated earlier, to those 300, and we will do a reach out just to kind of make it fair to everyone. We would do an email blast to all the communities. We do have a couple at state conferences, so we plan on doing some outreach there as well. But I don't foresee us having an issue, and that's the same exact process as regular what we've been doing a year in and a year out for the base program. It will be challenging on the lead service lines pot of money. That's what we're now hammering, is getting that project priority list and potentially the intended use plan.
Great, thanks. So this is another question that's getting kind of in the specifics, but they're asking how much of the grants, the BIL grant money, I think SRF just in general, can be used by the state primacy agency themselves, and what's involved with getting those funds available, and then what are you all looking to spend those funds on? Like, what specifically are you kind of earmarking them for? Does that make sense? There's kind of multiple questions in one, but
I can answer very quickly. We
okay.
don't have those plans. We don't have those plans yet.
Okay, that's, yeah, I was gonna say.
In Connecticut, we're just starting to even talk about what to do, how to do it.
Right, and I would say the same thing for Alaska. All the normal set-aside percentages apply to each of these grants. So we're currently looking at how we would allocate that funding and what projects we would be doing.
Yeah, I would say the same.
Yeah, in Kansas, kind of like what we did when ARA came about in 2009, we didn't take any set-asides out of that money. We used the normal appropriation set-asides to run the program. we anticipate doing that, except we'll probably use, as I mentioned, the set-asides to fund some contracts, the bill set-asides. And if we run into a problem with staffing, we'll have to figure it out then. So,
Eddie, what about your group?
I think, well, for us, we are the agency that is the primacy agency and the grant recipients as well. So we've been having those talks internally, and as a matter of fact, it is a budget season for us, just like it is for most of you probably. So we're talking about what we can do with the set-asides from the bill. Bill mentioned ERA. I believe during ERA, the only set-asides that we were allowed to take is the 2% and possibly the 4%. This part of money, or the money that is being made available via the bill, it is subject to the entire 31, ish percent, depending on how you calculate your formula. So that's quite a bit. And the challenging part is will be for us to find contractors, and I guess some contractor provide that technical assistance and and fund those eligible activities under the set aside. So that's what we're looking at. So yeah, but it's like I said, for us, we are the grant recipient and the primacy agencies. Those that are the primacy agencies that they would have to, I would suggest, if I may, that they need to work closely with the agency that is the grant recipient, because whatever it is that they are planning on doing would have to go potentially in the grant application and the work plan. So start those discussions now.
Awesome. So this is kind of another more general one, but thoughts or opinions on the funding of the private side lead service lines. So I know there are some nuances with the different states as far as how funds can be used for those public sides. Are you all seeing any possible issues in implementing those funds, or any things popping up on your end?
There's definitely going to be issues. One of the things with Kansas, we know we can't put our own money into this because it would have to come from tax-exempt bond proceeds, and there's tax issues if you use tax-exempt bond proceeds for private use. You can't do that. So it would really be, we're just going to use this lead service line money coming in through the bill. We'll be hard-pressed to put our own money to it. As far as how that's going to be implemented, we're going to kind of pass the buck. We've never done this before, so it's going to be up to the municipality to come up with a way of how they're going to get that private side replaced. Whether they're just going to do it at cost, or if they're going to set up a separate program that the residents can borrow from them. Of course, we'll reimburse for that, but as we mentioned before, we can only have loans with the utility, not the individuals. So.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about our state lead service line replacement program is we fund the entire length of the line. So whether it's public side, private side, owned all by the system, owned by whatever, our state program will fund for the full length. And since it's already coming from like the state money, that's really not, that part hasn't been that much of a problem. The thing I'm interested to see how the infrastructure bill money works out is that the definition of lead service line does not include pigtails or goosenecks. And that's sort of what we've found to be a lot of the lead signs, like a large percentage of the lines that have been done via our state lead service line replacement program have involved either like a pigtail or like gooseneck, and not much lead downstream of not much lead downstream of the curb stop. So if we're not, so that's one part. And the second part is we're not allowed to do, like a partial with these lead service line. Are you going to be spending money to replace pipe that's not lead, and I'm not really sure. I guess, well, yeah, we had to wait for the guidance. But those are some of the local issues that we've seen out of our state program, and I'm very interested to see if that's going, to translate it all into this infrastructure money.
And similar, if Stephanie if I could add, similar,
Oh yeah, of course.
We have a lot of lead goosenecks that we've seen so far identified, and we're really hopeful that this funding could be utilized to remove that if the utility wants to go after it aggressively, and we hope that they do.
Great. So this is a question that I feel like I should know the answer to, and I'm not sure if this might be needing to be addressed under the guidance, but we had a state asking if the BIL money is used to fund inventories, would it need to be awarded to the systems as a 49% grant, 51% SRF loan split? Do any of you have the answer to that one?
No, nobody knows the answer to that.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
figured. That's what I figured.
Wait for guidance, and the states will have, I'm assuming, the states have always determined the criteria for loan forgiveness. So it'll be up to each state if they want to do it differently.
Yeah, okay, that looks like a pretty resounding agreement there. That's what I figured, but I was like, I'll ask and see. So we're getting down now to like 8 minutes left. I'm not surprised we were able to fill us up. So I wanted to go kind of wrap us up with a general overarching question to close out for each of you to answer. So what advice or recommendations do you have for systems who for them to get themselves ready to apply for this funding? Particularly, I would put my own emphasis, this wasn't part of the question, but I would put my own emphasis on those disadvantaged small communities that, maybe haven't gone down this route previously. What would you all, Cindy, I start with you.
Well, we haven't really thought about this question too much, again, because we don't have lead service lines here. So what we're focusing on is the inventories, and we're waiting on guidance from the EPA on what those inventories are going to entail, and then we will work with our systems very closely, because most of our systems, we only have 8 systems in the state that are above 10,000. So most of our systems are very small, and they're going to need a lot of technical and managerial assistance to manage the inventory. So I would say, of course, keep apprised of all of the information, all of the guidance that we hope is coming from EPA, and then working with your state primacy agency to make sure that you're ready to go with the inventories.
Awesome, thanks. Eddie, do you have anything to add on to that?
Not much, just except what we've been telling people. Obviously, we're waiting on that guidance, and we're waiting on EPA to tell us how that, they wanted us to expand that money. So the question that was asked about the 49% versus the 51%, sitting through some of those the work groups, they're saying like, no, if you're getting a 40 million, well, your 49% approximately is just say $20 million. You could just do a combination of loan and grants. You could just do within that $20 million, you could do 100% forgiveness and give a disadvantaged community $20 million, but that remains to be seen. So until we get that guidance, we do not know. So what the messaging, from us to the communities that we serve is, if you do know, or you feel like you do have some lead service lines that you need to replace, or you are going to need lead service line identifications and inventory to comply with the LCRR, get on our list. Let's work together. Let's bring that money to the state, and we will work through it, and we'll cross that bridge, together once we get there. So that's what the messaging has been. So provided the information we have.
Thanks, Eddie. I'm just going across my screen. So William, you're next.
So, of course, for applications, the most important part's going to be that inventory. Matter of fact, we've decided, we're not going to execute a loan without it. However, in Kansas, you don't need an inventory to get on our project priority list. To free application, you don't need to have that inventory done. So we're hoping we get some people that understand they have an issue and will submit a project. However, it's going to be a fine line. We don't want people to submit projects and have no idea what kind of problem they have. So again, inventory is going to be very important, especially, actually, it's going to be required for the application. We want people to have educated pre-applications that come in, even if they don't have an inventory. They need to understand somewhat of the scope of the problem they have.
Great, thanks. Lori?
Thank you, Stephanie. Our message has been get ready, be ready, apply. We started that messaging last year and the year before. We really made a concerted effort last year when we all heard that this infrastructure funding could be coming, right? We were planning for it, we hit the ground running, and now we have 12 really good projects. We have systems in those 12 projects, we have it across the board. We have some that are ready to go, some that are almost ready to go. And then there are others that are lagging behind, but we're happy to have those 12 projects in the door. We anticipate getting many, many more. The concern that we have is for our small, well, there's a lot of concerns. One of the biggest concerns is these small systems that have to comply. We haven't even spoken about the non-community systems that have to deal with lead service line and the lead and copper, right? So it gets even down to these other small non-traditional systems that have no idea this is coming their way. So I think a lot of things have to do with education, outreach, and communication, and on a consistent basis. We plan to hold webinars, we plan to issue circular letters, we plan to talk to a lot of people, but we feel like we can't do it often enough. So we really, a lot of it starts, as all of us said, with EPA's guidance documents, right? We hope to see them in the next couple of weeks. And then we need to work with EPA to launch a massive communication through all of our states, through all of our regions, out to people that need to know this information. I hope that we can work together on that. And that'd be very helpful for all of us, because all of us are just going to replicate it over and over and over again, 57 of us that are out here. So we need EPA's help on how to communicate that to our public and to the people that need to know this the most.
Thanks. Steve, you want to round us out?
Yeah, I think just to sort of, to piggyback on what all the rest of the members of the panel have basically said, is just, we need the guidance, but once that's out and the states have sort of figured out what they're going to do, and every state's going to do it a little bit differently. I think a lot of things will be the same, but every state's going to do it a little bit differently. I think definitely you want to be aware of what your state is, what they're going to do, and I know, like, we do multiple webinars every year, just when the new round of, like, the intended use plan comes out, and how to apply in different parts of the program, what's new, what's not, what's old, what's lost on. So definitely keep track of what your individual state, what their time frame is, what they're going to do. If they're going to be putting out a couple public sessions like this, just to get more information, watch. Definitely you want to attend. I think once the national, once the national guidance is out, I think there will be a very national, or at least I would hope there'll be a national kind of like message out there to say, here's the guidance, so, it's time to get working. So it's time to go work with your states, work with, like, your local governments. I think that kind of like the compounding of all those different messages will need to be enough to sort of start to get the pack to move. And I think once it starts to move, I think you'll see a lot of applications just come in just across all the states. Will it be all of the systems out there? Probably not. Obviously, some don't move as fast as some others, but take advantage of the technical assistance that will be available, because technical assistance will be available. So if you're a system that is going to need it, don't be afraid to go take advantage of the assistance that's there as well.
Perfect. No, that's a great way to round out that question. So we are right at 4:29. Ashley, if you could go to the final slide. So as I thought this was a great session. We could go on and on about all of these topics, and obviously, we've really learned a lot as with staff as we've gone through this to kind of pick out, those issues that we're really going to have to work on as we continue with these funds throughout 2022 and beyond. So thank you to all 5 of you for sharing all of your expertise and knowledge and firsthand experience. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. We are still over 600. So thank you all so much for staying with us. And remember, the slides from today are already up on our website, and the recording should be up soon. Please join us next Wednesday for our final 2 sessions, where we'll be discussing identifying the private side of service lines and also how to map and communicate about your inventories. So with that, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, y'all.